Do you like the book, The Millionaire Next Door? Would you prefer to have the slow but consistent accumulation of wealth without a need for the fancy or flashy lifestyle? If you can be patient and are cool with taking a systematic approach to building your wealth, then you're going to love this video. Because today we're going to dive in and talk about the Wealth Dynamics Accumulator. We're going to discuss the winning and losing formula of the most famous accumulator of them all, Warren Buffett. This short video could end up saving you years of doing the wrong work, taking the wrong advice, and partnering with the wrong people. If you are a Wealth Dynamics accumulator, this could just be the video that helps you keep finding your flow. If you like this video, make sure that you click the like button, comment down below with your biggest takeaway or question that you might have. And as always, if you have not done so already, please do subscribe to this channel and click that little notification bell so that you never miss an episode. All right. So my name is 𝘼𝘾𝘾𝙐𝙈, aka the Flow Coach, or at least that's what my clients call me. I used to be the poster child for grind, not flow. I did everything the wrong way, oftentimes doing strategies that were good for accumulators, even though I'm a creator. And it was when I discovered this system of wealth dynamics that I really figured out that, hey, you know what? We're not all created equally. And if we understand that we have differences, pros and cons, strengths and weaknesses, and we can optimize for those, really great things can begin to happen. So our agenda for this call, first 5 minutes was just letting everybody hop on here so that we can all see each other and speak with each other. And now we're going to dive into the actual work. And the first thing we're going to do is talk about differentiation. And that is to say, what makes you as an accumulator different from the other 7 wealth dynamics profiles? And then we're going to dive in from there and say, okay, individualization, what makes you as an individual accumulator different from other accumulators? And then after that, we'll dive into application. What does it take to actually build, retain wealth as an accumulator? And how can you keep access to cash flow while you are accumulating all of those assets? And then towards the end, we will do a Q&A for 15, 20 minutes, just depending on how many questions we have. So with that, we're going to go ahead and dive in. I will just disclose that the whole reason why I am doing this training is because I am launching a YouTube channel, The Flow Coach on YouTube, and we are going to begin that channel by releasing 8 videos, one for each of the Wealth Dynamics profiles. And this was one way for me to make sure that I actually got that done during the Christmas season. So here we are diving in. Let us begin. So I'm going to switch my share real quick. And during this time, I do ask that if you have any questions, just stay on mute and write the question down, remember the question, and at the end, we will handle the Q&A. So let me just pull my iPad up real quick. Okay, so as a Wealth Dynamics accumulator, when we look at this graph here, this graphic is what we call the Wealth Dynamics square. Now, you're down here at this bottom left corner as an accumulator. Now, what this means, it means that you are half tempo and half steel. Not necessarily exactly half. We'll get into that when we talk about the individualization. But when it comes to differentiation compared to all the other profiles, you're stacked in these 2 entrepreneur elements, these 2 frequencies, more than any other. And so when we look at that, we say, okay, well, what does that mean about you? And what does it mean about your ability to build and retain wealth? Well, in wealth dynamics, we use a formula called wealth equals value times leverage. And to understand this, it means that there are some profiles that are much better at creating value and other profiles that are much better at creating leverage. I'm going to pause for a moment because my computer seems to be lagging. Okay, so as I mentioned, wealth equals value times leverage. Some of these profiles are better at value, some are better at leverage. So what makes the difference actually comes down to the way that you think and the way that you act. So on the x-axis here, you'll notice that we have the action dynamic, and that is going from the left to the right. Now, like all things in life, it's a duality. You know, hot is just another version of cold. Up is another version of down. And so when we look at this, we say the action dynamic, if it's all the way on the left side of the square here, that action dynamic is what we call an introverted action dynamic. Now, introverted does not mean that you're always behind the scenes and you don't want to hang out with people. Introverted simply means that in order to get something done, you go do it yourself. It is an action dynamic. If I have a problem to solve and I have an introverted action dynamic, I am most likely going to solve that problem by hopping on YouTube or reading the instruction manual or relying on my existing, resources and knowledge to go ahead and get it handled myself. This is the reason on the left side of the square here, you see the word how. because that's the super question of the steel energy person who is an introverted action dynamic. Now contrast that with the blaze energy person who has an extroverted action dynamic, meaning that oftentimes, yes, these are the outgoing, life of the party, boisterous people, but it's not really about that so much as it is about when it's time to get something done, they answer the question, who? My wife is a supporter profile. That's right over here. And as a supporter profile, she's got extroverted action dynamic, which means if I ask her to do anything or to solve any problem, her response is always, well, who can we call that can fix that? And sometimes it's funny in our house because I'm trying to figure out like how to do something. And then she's like, well, who do we know that can do it? And sometimes she's right. We should just like go get a who to do it. And sometimes I just need to know and I don't want a who. But the fact that she can shift into that who question is very valuable for her because she has the answer to who. Whereas for an introverted person, they're going to have the answer to how. So just understanding those two differences, this is what creates leverage. And leverage comes in one of two flavors, multiplication or magnification. So multiplication is when you take that business of yours, you take that product of yours, and you find a way to get more of it out there. So let's say that you sell tennis shoes. Instead of, trying to raise the price of your one pair of tennis shoes, you try and multiply the number of tennis shoes that you have so that you can sell more of them. So you sell 10 pairs of shoes for $100 a piece and you make $1,000. Magnification is saying, how do I sell one pair of shoes for $1,000? Well, I go get Kobe Bryant to sign it before he passes. And so now it's worth $1,000. Or I go get, Michael Jordan to sign a pair of tennis shoes or somebody to endorse my product. So magnification is about being bigger. It's about more people knowing about your brand. It's about getting it out there to the point that you have a supply and demand challenge that allows you to charge more for the product versus on the other side, you want to increase the supply to meet the demand so that you can have more sales. So those are two different ways of leveraging. But the formula is wealth equals value times leverage. So where is the value actually coming from? Well, in the example I just gave with the pair of shoes, that type of value is the value of innovation. Now, that doesn't come from an action dynamic. That comes from a thinking dynamic, the way that you process information. Now, the thinking dynamic is right here on the y-axis, right? So going up and down, meaning the more dynamo you are, right, the more that your thinking dynamic is going to be intuitive. Meaning head in the clouds, meaning that you can connect invisible dots up in the sky, you see what's possible, and you come up with something, you create things. So innovative people tend to be great with a blank page. Well, that is very different from the other type of thinking dynamic down here, which is the sensory thinking dynamic. So the sensory thinking dynamic is much slower. It's much more calm, cool, and collected. It's not looking for the new great idea. It's avoiding risk. It's looking directly at what is happening in the market and right in front of me, connecting dots, yes, but not invisible dots out in the future, visible dots right here in the present moment. The sensory person understands that their value creation is not from innovation. Their value creation is from timing. And that's a huge awakening for a lot of people because in our entrepreneurial culture, we really celebrate innovation. We say that people that come up with products, the Steve Jobs and the, Elon Musks and the Walt Disneys and the, these Richard Branson types, that's who gets celebrated. But it's actually the people at the bottom here that make sure that all of those people's products actually get delivered and then they get delivered on time. So you could come up with a great movie script, but somebody's actually got to make sure that everybody shows up on the set and that all the lights are ordered and everything is there and everything, is in the right order, that you shoot things at the right time and you schedule them out and you understand what's happening with weather at that time and like all of the more grounded detail, right? Because they have their ear to the ground, very different from having your head in the clouds. So where does the accumulator fit in all of this? Well, as an accumulator, you're down here at this bottom left corner, which means that you are a combination of steel energy and tempo energy, meaning that you have a introverted action dynamic and a sensory thinking dynamic, meaning that you answer the question when and where, and you answer the question how better than anybody else. So the chief example of an accumulator that everybody talks about is Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett doesn't run around creating products and coming up with companies. In fact, he is quoted as saying that over all of these decades of running Berkshire Hathaway, we have not learned how to solve huge business challenges. We've learned how to avoid them. You see, because the accumulator can see things coming before they hit. Warren Buffett was able to buy a piece of Goldman Sachs, right? Goldman Sachs isn't even for sale. But because of the timing and his positioning and making sure that he had the capital he needed at the right time, in the right place, he was able to make those investments. And while you have all of the people out there that have their Bitcoin millions, or they're invested early in this company, or they got lucky here, why does he get lucky over and over and over again? Well, it's because it's not luck. It's systematic investment. It's choosing to accumulate. And unlike a trader who is just one tick to the right over here, the accumulator doesn't sell. The accumulator accumulates. And as we get into the application of how to really build wealth as an accumulator, you'll begin to see that your ability to choose an asset as an accumulator and hang on to that asset, you can still extract cash flow from it if you know how to do that, the same way that people like Warren Buffett have, or real estate investors do all the time. You actually continue to accumulate over and over and over. You don't need to be out there in the flash and everybody know everything you have, because the real wins behind the scenes are what actually matter the most to you. So this is how you are different from everybody else. So now let's talk about how you actually differ from other accumulators, and we'll get into your individualization. So for your individualization, I'm going to share my screen here again. You'll notice when you take the Wealth Dynamics Profile Assessment that you are going to get one of these profile reports. And when it prints out, it's going to give you some details. It's going to diagnose you, so to speak. It's going to tell you that these are your strengths and these are your weaknesses. Now, when you first read this, you might say, that really hits the nail on the head. That really fits me. Or you might go, that doesn't really fit. There's something about that I don't feel quite right about. Like, maybe I love to be on stage and out in front of people. Here's the thing. Not all accumulators are created equally. On the right side of the screen here, you see what we call the spider graph. And the spider graph shows us how much of each of the 4 different entrepreneur elements or frequencies or energies or whatever you want to call it, right? How much dynamo, tempo, blaze, and steel you have. And in this person's example, they have 16% dynamo, only 4% blaze, but they've got 44% tempo and 36% steel, meaning 44% is down in that sensory and 36% is over in that introverted, which means I'm going to see in time, real time, how I can use a system to be able to accumulate more wealth. Now, this person has 16% dynamo. So to whatever extent I tell this person, you know what, you're not going to be as great with coming up with ideas, they may say, you know what, I actually feel like I'm okay with ideas. And it's true. But when I tell them that you're probably not going to be the life of the party and want to go out and mix with a whole bunch of people all the time, you'll probably have less energy at the end of the day if you spend your time around a bunch of people, they're going to nod their head to that one. Why? Because they've got 4% blaze. So to whatever extent your accumulator profile type is close to 50% tempo and 50% steel, everything I'm about to read is going to feel really true. And then to whatever percentage it's not, you're going to say, well, that doesn't quite fit for me. Do not throw the baby out with the bathwater. The important thing to understand about wealth dynamics is as you apply it to your life, you understand it better. And the more you live your life according to your spider graph, the more you're going to be into flow, right? So that means that this person here, this accumulator, may have some of their time, energy, and effort going into innovation, but not a ton of it. And if they actually focus on the strategy of the accumulator, they could actually see that dynamo come down and their wealth massively go up, their flow go up, and the amount of time they actually have to spend creating wealth decrease as well. So let's take a look at this. The strengths of the accumulator. You are reliable. You are careful. You deliver things on time. You're organized, and you look for a time and place for everything. You see what could go wrong, and you're great at keeping the team together. I've got a friend, his name's Timothy. He's an accumulator. This describes him to a T. Even just speaking with members of his team, they just go on and on about how amazing he is at keeping his team together, which is interesting because this is not a blaze person, an outgoing person. In fact, some of the most outgoing people, stars, have the hardest time keeping team loyalty because they're moving so fast and not taking time to really make sure people are looked after. The accumulator, very different, is accumulating even people, the right people around them. Now, your challenges are going to be coming from the opposite side, which is that because you're so committed to finishing, you often have difficulty deciding on what to start. You get easily distracted by the details. You're worried about getting things wrong. You collect clutter, right? And oftentimes walk away from chaos that could have been, reorganized into something beautiful, right? Your successes come when you're left to work at your own pace, right? Accumulators are the tortoises that always win the race, right? But they're also kind of slow to get started, which again, could be a good thing, right? Because you have the ability to pick up the pieces other people leave behind. Again, with the example of Warren Buffett being able to take a piece of a company that was not an accumulator company, right? They're actually a market connection company, more on the 𝘼𝘾𝘾𝙐𝙈 tempo side, right? And your struggles would be that you will often wait for too much information, right? Or often wait for somebody else to give you direction, right? So like a goalie in a football game, you are the best defenders because you are so careful, but you don't see the need to lead up front. So let's talk about how we actually apply all of this, because at the end of the day, knowing this doesn't really, separate this system from any other, system of personality until you understand what to actually go do with it. And so what I'm going to show you next is how do you build wealth? And I want you to think of this from a perspective of your life. You want to build wealth during your lifetime. So oftentimes people can't separate business and earning money from wealth. Well, here's the difference. Business and earning money, at the end of the year, you just earned money. Building wealth, when the money goes away, you still have something. So what are the assets that you are accumulating? What is it that you are still going to have if the money disappeared that is going to allow you to be able to recreate cash flow again in the future? So with this, we'll go into wealth creation for accumulators. Number one, building your wealth foundation will require you to build a wealth network. Now that may not come as your first thought, oh, I'm going to go build a network, but you really do need to do that. Okay. And if you don't have the money to invest, you're going to need to know the people who do, and they're going to need to know you. Trust me, I have so many creators and stars that I talk to all the time that they make tons of money. End of the year, it's all gone. They make tons of money. They invested in the wrong thing. End of the year, it's all gone. Right? So they need you as much as you need them. So garner support from financiers to do the financing and peers to lend you a breadth of experience. Find a strong supporter so they can go out and network on your behalf and you don't have to be out there doing that. And find a great mechanic that can put your systems together, right? Warren Buffett has the ability to, in real time, spot the deals, but he has a mechanic that puts his systems together to be able to take those deals and put them into his business to maximize profit and to restructure the financing. Now, when are you actually creating wealth as an accumulator? It's actually in the time that you spend developing your selection system for appreciating assets to focus on, right? So people that are like jumping into the next fast, biggest stock, or getting into Tesla after it goes up 500%, or getting into Bitcoin after it goes up 3,000%. That's not an accumulator, right? An accumulator is a person who is sitting back, analyzing and selecting things that will not go down, rather than hoping and praying that things will just skyrocket up. So what you want to do is focus on one area in which you have high interest. Seek out masters in that area. Now, when I say area, that could be an asset class like, real estate, or, pharmaceutical companies, or, franchises, or it could be focusing on a geographical region like Europe or Asia or the States, right? Free up your time to build your sensitivity and your awareness for the right buying opportunities, and to time these opportunities to get the right purchase prices. Warren Buffett will make more money off of one deal that he does every 10 years than most people in all of the other 7 profiles will make in the entire decade. So how do you create value? Well, it actually is an internal value that you need to create. So again, it comes back to developing your market knowledge and your understanding of when and where the buying opportunities occur. Understand how to finance and refinance assets without selling to effectively compound your gains. This is another big thing. The traders that are out there, just one profile to the right from you on the wealth dynamic square, they buy low and sell high. Your job is to buy and keep. So if you want to extract cash, we're going to show you here in a minute exactly how to do that, but you don't do it by selling the asset. You hold on to the asset. In other words, one of the great mantras of the accumulator is buy, don't sell. So how do you own the value that you create? Well, interestingly enough, for the accumulator, it's not the physical asset that you need to own, right? That's not what you're accumulating. What you're accumulating is your ownership of the purchasing decision process itself and the rights to the assets. So again, think of Warren Buffett, right? When he made his first $1 million, it was by having a 10% ownership in $10 million that wasn't his that he was able to appreciate. So that ownership of a piece of what he's creating, right, is where he gets the actual value increase, but his ownership of the ability to make the sell decision and the buy decision, that is what you need to own as the accumulator, okay? So even if you don't own the assets outright, you must hold that right to sell that asset at any moment in time. right? So that gives you the ability to go in and out. Now, that's how you create value. How do we leverage that value? Because it is value times leverage that creates our wealth. Your leverage will come from the systems that you create to identify and select the right purchases, along with financing to leverage on your purchasing power. Your greatest leverage is your performance history. I'll say that again. Your greatest leverage is your performance history. People want to know that when they give you their money, they're putting it into safe hands that can deliver reliable results, right? So the people out there that are trying to make 3,000% rate of returns are not going to come to an accumulator, right? The people that are trying to invest $5,000 are not going to come to an accumulator. But people that have $50 million of endowment that they need to invest on behalf of a family or an institution or a school, they're going to go to the accumulator because the accumulator has that record of delivering reliable results. So how do you secure cash flow? Because if you're just buying up all these assets and they're growing in size, it looks really good on your balance sheet, but what is that going to look like on your actual profit and loss? What's it going to look like on your cash flow statement? That's really going to come down to two things. Number one, you can create a fund or a company, right? Which you then pass the rights to the company and then sell the shares. The shares are your liquidity, right? But you're still maintaining, by owning the company, the right to manage the assets. So you're not letting go of that right to buy and sell and manage the assets. Okay. The second option, and this would be one that you could use very easily in something like real estate, is to refinance your assets, right? As they go up in value and appreciate, you can actually take the cash out of those assets, right? In the form of refinancing, of pulling out a loan, and you don't lose any of the rights to the asset by doing that. This is actually my favorite strategy when it comes to real estate, at least in the United States, because our tax law, we don't pay taxes on that because that's technically borrowed money, right? Or at least we don't pay taxes yet on that because it's borrowed money, right? So there's a whole timing side to this. So this is how you make sure the cash flow is still coming in while you're accumulating all of these assets. Now, you might be watching this right now and thinking, this all makes a ton of sense, but I'm not in a place right now where I'm trying to build wealth. I'm in a place right now where I'm trying to get a job. Well, accumulators can be great assets to a team as well. It's not just about going out and just building wealth out of the gate. Now, I want every person who watches this video to go build wealth. That is the ultimate trajectory and goal of being an entrepreneur, not to make money, but to build wealth. And so if you're going to build that wealth, it may start with being on somebody's team. Or maybe you're watching this because maybe you are a deal maker and somebody told you, hey, you need to go get an accumulator on your team. Or you're a creator and someone told you, hey, you need to get an accumulator on your team. Here's how accumulators fit in on teams. They're the best ambassadors. They're reliable. They get things done on time. They don't make rash decisions, right? They also can be some of your best project managers because they have that eye for detail. When a task or project needs to be delivered reliably and on budget, give that to an accumulator. They're the most reliable organizers on the entire team. Okay, that is it for our Wealth Dynamics accumulators. If you don't know your profile type yet, then make sure you look down below in the description. You'll find a link there for you to go take the test. And if you do already know that you're an accumulator and you'd like to get some help actually finding your flow, finding the right people for your team, putting the right systems in place to grow your business, you can also reach out to us with a link down in the description and we will connect you with a member of our team that can help you figure out what is your best next step. This video, like all the videos on this channel, is designed to help you find your flow. And if it is helping you, then please go ahead and like it, share it, comment down below so that other accumulators can find these videos too, so that they can start to find more flow in their lives as well. And if you haven't done so already, make sure you click the subscribe button, push that notification bell, and make sure that you never miss an episode. Until I see you next time, remember, keep finding your flow.